What is the Subnautica drama and where does the truth lie? That's what this video is going to be about. Now, if you don't know what Subnautica is and you don't care about the drama, you don't know anything about the drama, trust me, this video will be funny enough that you can just watch through it anyway. I'll go through everything. If you do know what the drama is and you've watched all 3 videos on YouTube a day, you've seen everything on Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, you've caught the employees talking on Bluesky, if that's you, don't worry. I'm only going to make 1 video on this, hopefully, and it'll have everything in it, and everything I'm saying in this video will stand up to scrutiny. I am either going to say things that I am backing up with direct interviews that you can see right in front of you, or I'm saying things that I'm so 100% confident in that no amount of scrutiny could possibly prove me wrong. That's because if you guys have looked at the videos on my channel, I generally do videos on game mechanics, things I can verify. I really like things that I can verify. And in this video, I'm going to be just verifying things because people are lying in ways that are actually just rather absurd. It's just funny how much they're lying. What is the drama then? Why is this in front of you? The drama is effectively that Krafton, the publisher of Unknown Worlds, has fired 3 of the company owners of Unknown Worlds and delayed the game to 2026 to not give Unknown Worlds the bonuses that they promised to them. Now, a publisher is they're on top of a developer. Krafton, publisher, Unknown Worlds, developer. The publisher gives money to the developer to make a game. Then that game will pay money back in its royalties and its dividends, whatever you want to call it, back to the publisher. Okay, they're basically an investment. And a publisher is basically an investor. And when Krafton bought Unknown Worlds over here, they promised them bonuses of $250 million if they could produce the Subnautica 2 early access on time. The insinuation then from the 3 company owners of Unknown Worlds who were fired was that they were fired and the game was delayed so they wouldn't have to pay that bonus. So who has the financial incentive to lie? And why are they lying? That's pretty much what we're going into here. Before I go any further, I need to say please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on any of your thoughts on anything I'm saying. Remember, leaving comments is fantastic. So after this came out, after this image was posted everywhere, and after the developers did their thing, Krafton put out this statement. Now, this statement is full of a lot more information than this. This is probably better than this. And the more you look into this, the more you kind of realize this actually is information I can verify. In fact, the entire video is going to be pretty much me just verifying whether or not Krafton is saying things that are true or they're saying things that are not true. So then what is Subnautica? What is this game right here? What is Subnautica 2? Subnautica is just an underworld exploration crafting game. We're not really going to go into it more than that. It's a game, and before I do any of this, do make sure you guys can use this video as a podcast. You can just listen along. You don't need to watch me on everything. I'm telling a story here, so I don't really want to limit myself. We're telling a grand story because it'll be funny. And also there's a lot of background information here that I just want to talk about because I think it's funny. So anyway, Subnautica 2 was going to be another underwater exploration crafting game. Now, it was meant to be more of a live service kind of game, which is why it was delayed. See, the developers here said that the game was not ready for early access. That as a live service game, it needed to make a big splash when it released. And in its current content, people would play it, give up on it, and move on. You can't really make a live service game if everybody just moves on after like 6 hours of playing the game. Whose idea was it to make it an early access live service game? That's going to be a bit more complicated, actually, and it does appear to me to be that the developers, the company owners of Unknown Worlds, are the ones who are pushing that. So, at any rate, this game was made by Unknown Worlds, Subnautica 1. This is Subnautica 2's gameplay reveal trailer. So how do I know, then, that I don't think the game was ready for early access? Well, there are some company leaks here, which I will get into. Whether or not these are true, I assure you, will not actually factor in to my opinion here. My opinion is entirely based on Unknown Worlds. See, I play a lot of games, and I have played a lot of games in my life. I played, ironically, the original Natural Selection. I played Natural Selection 2. I know what Zen of Sudoku is. And because of that, I kind of have information that would influence my opinion. See, Unknown Worlds is a gaming company. They were a pioneer of early access, and they were a terrible one at it. They pushed early access when games were clearly not ready for early access. Natural Selection 2 pushed alpha into beta into live within a year. The game ran at about 7 FPS during alpha, ran at about 8 FPS during beta, and ran at about 9 FPS during the live launch. It then continued to get refined until the FPS got up to like 30, but it never really did much better than that. Natural Selection 2 was entirely unplayable during their early access. Subnautica, not as bad as that, still faced its own issues with not exactly the greatest early access launch. This company does not do early access well. Now, Charlie, who's going to be the biggest figure here, Charlie was the owner of the company. Charlie really doesn't have a good opinion on if a game is ready or not for early access. He says the game was ready for early access and they were screwed out of their bonuses. I say, look, based on your track record, I really doubt it. And actually, I'm more willing to believe the producer on this one. Because to me, throughout what I've seen in video games, would a producer be willing to take a game that was moderately successful, make a cash grab sequel, shove it into early access, and make a lot of money, tainting that game's future prospects because now everybody assumes that games with that name will be bad? Yes, of course they will. That's happened a lot. Lots of games have pushed out a sequel, clearly not ready, or I should say lots of producers have pushed out a game clearly not ready against the interests of the developers in order to make a quick buck. So what this is asking me to do, this drama, these people here, they're asking me to believe that the producer of a company actually delayed a game for no reason, which doesn't make sense to me. Now, you could say it was for the royalties that they wouldn't have to pay out. Not the royalties, the bonuses they wouldn't have to pay out. But we'll get into why that also kind of doesn't make sense. Just on my track record with this company, I know they don't really do early access well. But there were some leaks here. Whether or not these are true, you can believe these are true. You can believe these are not true. I believe they're pretty true because they use a lot of names and terms that could really only be known to people who were working in the development. These have not been refuted. These have not been disputed. And even if these were total lies, total fabrications, everything here was some dude with a creative imagination just making things up, right? Even if that was true, I would still think that this company's track record with early access is bad enough that, and by the way, we will get into Moonbreaker. This company's track record with early access is bad enough that I just don't trust them. So let's talk about this. When we talk about biomes going into Subnautica 2, when they originally pitched the 2023 early access, now they do say compared to quarter 2 2023. So they're saying to get this game ready for early access, they had to remove 2 entire biomes, leaving them with pretty much nothing left. To get it ready for early access, they had to remove a Leviathan and disable character customization and have fewer creatures and biomods. They had to remove equipment, decrease all additional vehicles. Okay, they had to remove all custom game modes, and they had to cut 6 hours of narrative content, bringing them to, as they say here, about 8 to 10 hours of gameplay in total. Based on what I know of early access games, having only 8 to 10 hours does sound believable. Once again, this is sort of fitting with like me. I just generally, I trust that this leak is probably true. Especially this company having only 8 hours of content in an exploration game. I mean, look, I played Sons of the Forest. At any rate, let's read then what Crafton is saying. Crafton is saying, to our 12 million fellow subnauts, inevitable leadership change driven by project abandonment despite holding 90% of the earnouts for themselves. Now, this is where I started. Literally, I saw that and I went, So the owners of the company, the 3 that were fired, were set to get 90% of the earnout. 3 people were going to get 90% of the money, and 10% of it was going to be strewn about to all the peasants, I guess. And the company owners are now going, no, think of the peasants and the 90% we're getting for the 3 of us. But think of the peasants. And okay. This, by the way, at the end of this video, I will show this 90% is entirely accurate and fits 100%. They never actually even disputed that they were going to get 90%. But let's talk about this. Okay. Background to leadership change. Crafton deeply values Subnautica's unique creativity and I'm going to skip to it. It's just fluff. Okay. Specifically, in addition to the initial $500 million purchase price, we allocated approximately 90% of the up to $250 million earn-out compensation to the 3 former executives, with the expectation that they would demonstrate leadership and active involvement in the development of Subnautica 2. So did they have leadership and active involvement? Well, no. In fact, their involvement was so comically low that I literally can't believe they're even trying to dispute this, because they are on the record. But let's go forward. However, regrettably, the former leadership abandoned the responsibilities entrusted to them. Subnautica 2 was originally planned for early access launch in early 2024, but the timeline has since been delayed significantly. Crafton made multiple requests to Charlie and Max to resume their roles as game director and technical director, respectively, but both declined to do so. In particular, following the failure of Moonbreaker, Crafton asked Charlie to devote himself to development of Subnautica 2. However, instead of participating in the game development, he chose to focus on a personal film project. Okay, is any of this true? Did Moonbreaker fail? Did they refuse to resume their roles? Did they just expect to coast by doing nothing until a payday? Yes, all of that is true. In fact, all of that is so true, in fact, that Charlie himself has agreed with that. Sorry, Charlie, I don't know why you're on the record agreeing with that over and over again. Okay, let's talk about this. Abyssal Films is a new film production company from the creator of Subnautica. Oops. So he chose to focus on a personal film project. Here's the personal film project. It seems to have a lot of time dedicated to it. How much time, in fact, does Charlie himself agree that he chose to focus entirely on this film project rather than Subnautica 2? Yes, he does. In fact, in his about himself that he wrote himself, I'm Charlie Cleveland, and I've been designing video games for over 25 years. I founded Unknown Worlds and built games like Natural Selection 2, Subnautica, and Moonbreaker. I absolutely love making games, but wanted to try something new. Well, that's an ominous ending. But let's go on. At the end of 2023, I left San Francisco after almost 20 years and moved to Los Angeles to reset my life. Instead of taking it easy, I now find myself working on multiple film projects. It's amazing how fast it's all happening. Being right in the thick of things makes it much easier to meet like-minded people. One of the things that happened after moving to LA was that I met a new film director on the plane. Long story short, we are now finding ourselves making a Christmas movie together, along with a couple other unannounced film projects somehow. This does not sound like the sort of dude that is working hard on Subnautica 2. In fact, this doesn't sound like the sort of dude who's working at all at Subnautica 2 or directing it or doing anything at all. This does start to sound like the sort of dude who expected to coast by doing absolutely nothing and get $250 million. But let's talk about his movie here. His movie is Nutmeg and Mistletoe. Now, has this movie seen a lot of traction? We can see a poster here. Have they started filming it? Are we getting anything done? Well, no. The poster is just AI generated. Mid-Journey movie poster with requisite misspellings. So he's saying it's AI generated. The movie, some people are saying the movie is going to be AI generated. That's not true. I refute that claim entirely. The script, the actors, nothing will be AI generated. He just put up a poster here, AI generated. I've seen some people doing that to try to insult him, but I actually don't agree with that one at all. And I will actually defend him on this one. It is not AI generated at all. In fact, he says here, we're hoping to get a couple SNL vets to act in it as well. So this is what he's been doing. He's doing an early access movie. Yes, an early access movie. Remember what I said about not really trusting Charlie on what is early access? Because, like, I don't think he's got the greatest opinion on early access. Okay. Let's talk about something else. He said that he's not really working then on, well, he said at the release he's working on film, but you could say, okay, but he's working on his film while he's also managing his game. He's a hard worker. He's a multitasker. In his own words, then, how would he describe it? This is on a podcast that I had to look up and listen through all of it. Let's
was a natural way to do it. But now I'm taking a break from video games and working on a few different films and, kind of starting over. So this is a good way to get my start. And as I learn, I'm going to be sharing all that.
Let's listen to that one more time so you guys are hearing properly, because this is in his own words on his podcast. I'm not making it up. What does he say about his involvement in video games? And for the record, April 3rd, 2025. This is a couple months ago. This is when he is supposed to be on active development of the Subnautica 2 early access. For those of you guys who side with him, for those of you guys who like him, for those of you guys who are Subnautica fans, this is the quote company manager, designer, whatever you want to call it, of the game at the exact moment he is supposed to be working on it. What does he say?
Now I'm taking a break from video games and working on a few different films and, kind of starting over. So this is a good way to get my start.
Okay. I'm using his words here. Sorry, Charlie, but you put it on the internet. Okay. Let's then talk about Moonbreaker. Okay. We're going to talk about Moonbreaker because the producers have insinuated that after the failure of Moonbreaker, they asked him to start developing Subnautica 2. They said, look, your personal pet project failed. Can you now work on Subnautica 2? Did he? In fact, what was Moonbreaker? In fact, how much did he actually work on Subnautica? Those of you who are big fans of Subnautica, have you ever actually thought to yourself, how much did Charlie and these company owners, how much did they actually work on Subnautica? So let's dig out an old interview. This is from 2022. I looked at this interview too. I got a lot of my information from people who were just posting it, and I just looked it up and verified it to myself. But look, if you're willing to put your quotes in an interview, I'm going to trust you. Okay. Moonbreaker has been in the works behind closed doors for a whopping 5 years. Wait a minute. Moonbreaker 2022, Subnautica 2018. So if Moonbreaker was being developed since 2017 and Subnautica came out in 2018, wait a minute. You start to think to yourself, those dates aren't adding up. If a year before Subnautica came out of early access, Charlie was already working fully on Moonbreaker as his pet project, those dates don't add up to me. Maybe he was working at both at the same time. Maybe in fact he loved working at Subnautica. No, obviously it's not true, and you know it's not true. Both it and Subnautica Below Zero were being made simultaneously at Unknown Worlds, although Cleveland himself only worked on Moonbreaker. In his own words, I needed to switch away from Subnautica, he said. I've been working on it for 5 years, as intensely as I have been working on Moonbreaker for 5 years. But this one I want to keep working on. I love Subnautica, but those 5 years were really tough. Some of the team dynamics were tougher on Subnautica because we had so many people and we didn't know what the game was going to be for so long. I wanted this open world challenging game that wasn't going to hold your hand, and other people wanted it to be a little more guided. It was ultimately really good because we came to a nice middle ground. It was just completely draining. And then Moonbreaker. I feel like a lot of the time we didn't know it was going to be a good game. He further goes down at the bottom of the article. We want to make a game that's going to last a decade or longer, he said. Subnautica couldn't do that because it just wasn't designed to be expanded. This time, we're like, okay, let's get all our ducks in a row. If this works, how can we figure out a way to support it forever? And so here we are. Okay. The idea to do a live service, eternally supported game was actually from Charlie. And it unfortunately was supposed to be Moonbreaker, and then it was shifted over to Subnautica 2. Which he doesn't really work on, but at least he tried to work on. So was Moonbreaker, you all know about Moonbreaker, right? Like, I don't have to describe it to you. You all know exactly what this game is. Following the failure of Moonbreaker, did Moonbreaker fail? Yes, of course it did. With a 24-hour peak of 4 players, I don't think it's doing too hot. In fact, recent Steam reviews, of which it has a mere 1,262, recent Steam reviews show dead and no update. Honestly, such a shame this is a dead game. The game is not well balanced and very empty. Game deserved better, and such a great game abandoned. So, Moonbreaker comes out in 2022. Actually, it looks like it released in 2024. Was it in early access for 2 years and then just released? Wait, I didn't even notice that. Moonbreaker shows it came out in 2022, but 2024. So wait, if he was working on Moonbreaker the whole time, I'm literally just realizing this myself. These dates don't add up. Was he working on a game in early access for 2 years instead of ever touching Subnautica 2? Oh my god. Wait, that's ridiculous. Bro, you didn't even work on Subnautica 2. Wait, you literally did no work on Subnautica 2. What? Wait. You wanted to get 250 million for doing nothing? Okay. So how did Charlie respond then to these accusations from Crafton that he was doing basically nothing, expected to get a shitload of money for doing nothing, was not working on the game at all? Okay, obviously he did what any person would do. These are serious accusations. Bro, you're trying to take all the money for yourself? And you're insinuating that your team isn't getting money while lying about that, and you weren't working on the game at all, and instead you were working on Moonbreaker, and then once Moonbreaker failed, you just went off to do films? Well, how does he respond? Well, of course he responded in the best way possible. This is Flayra. This is Charlie right here. Previously game director at Unknown Worlds. Yeah, so previously. So this is the guy, right? How does he then respond to these accusations? He posts on Reddit, a Moonbreaker audio drama. That's right, he takes his time to advertise for Moonbreaker more. Okay. What does he then respond as we start to wrap up this video? What does he respond after that? Lawsuit, a community update from Charlie. Hello everyone, it continues to be an explosive and surreal time for the Subnautica team and the community. None of this is what we wanted, but we truly appreciate the amazing support we've gotten from everyone. It means a lot to us, especially now. As I wrote last week, we know in our souls that the game is ready for early access. That's just how we roll. Do I trust you, Charlie? I'm not sure. And we'd like nothing more than you to play it. Game devs live for this, but it's not currently under control. We've now filed a lawsuit against Crafton. The details should eventually become, at least mostly, public. You all deserve the full story. Suing a multi-billion-dollar company is a painful, public, and possibly protracted way, was certainly not on my bucket list, but this needs to be made right. Subnautica has been my life's work, and I would never willingly abandon it or the amazing team that has poured their hearts into it. Can I just...
A way to get the word out, so that was a natural way to do it, but now I'm taking a break from video games and working on a few different films and, kind of starting over. So this is a good way to get my start. And
Charlie, you're on the record. Charlie, it's your voice. Charlie, it's Charlie Cleveland on your podcast, Charlie. As for the earnout, the idea that Max, Ted, and I wanted to keep it all for ourselves is totally untrue. That is true. They were not going to keep it all for themselves. Who accused you of that? Actually, who said he was keeping it all for himself? I'm actually curious. Who said that? Because it wasn't Crafton. Crafton said he was only taking 90%. That's not all of it. That's not all of it at all. So no one actually accused you of keeping it all for yourself. But how do I know that 90% number is right? As I wrap up this video, let's talk about one last little detail. How can I be so sure that keeping 90% of it for themselves is the truth? Historically, we've always shared our profits with the team and did the same when we sold the studio. Good on you, Charlie. How much did you share? You shared 10%. In fact, you can see me responding here, asking this guy to verify it. He never actually said that. Actually, where is here? Ah, right here. Here is Jason Schreier. He's a games journalist. In case you're wondering, I did ask him to verify it, but he never actually got back to me. Yeah, so they gave 10% of the buyout to their employees In other words, they kept 90%. Historically, we've always shared our profits with the team and did the same when we sold the studio. You shared 10%. You kept 90%. The insinuation here is that you're keeping 90%. Again, you're doing the same thing you did before. So does this not track? Once again, this seems to totally track. You kept 90% before, you're keeping 90% now. Now you're wording it as if you've been accused of keeping it all, but you were not accused of keeping it all. You were accused of keeping 90%. Like, come on, guys. I feel like I'm going crazy here. This is easily verifiable information. Jason Schreier has verified they only gave 10% to their employees. Reporter at Bloomberg, co-host at Triple Click, New York Times best-selling author of Play Nice, Press Reset, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. Jason Schreier. If you want to say that you lied here, Mr. Schreier, that's fine. But I don't think you did. And I think that okay, so there we go. That's going to be the entire video. Once again, make sure to like, comment, like, subscribe, comment, leave a comment. Sorry, my brain. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope you all have a great rest of your day.